I strongly believe in this thing where culture is about actions and not like a set of values. What you do is who you are. And what you do should be guided by what the product should be. Let me concretely say our product should be fast. So each person in the company should move fast too. Our product should be accurate. So each person in the company should be as truth-seeking as possible.
Truth-seeking. I heard that term in Bezos' episode in Lex Fridman.
It's hard to be truth-seeking. He clearly says that. We are all social animals. We like to seek validation, not truth. But we need to be truth-seeking in a company for the company to move forward.
안녕하세요. 최성운의 사고실험입니다. 오늘도 저희가 굉장히 특별한 게스트분을 모셨습니다. 아마존의 창업자로 유명한 제프 베조스나 엔비디아로부터 투자를 받아서 전 세계에서 가장 빠르게 성장하고 있는 AI 스타트업 퍼플렉시티 AI의 아라빈드 CEO님을 모셨는데요. 지금 현 시점에서 가장 성능이 뛰어난 검색엔진 챗봇을 제공하고 있다고 말할 수 있을 것 같습니다. 다만 이날 주어진 시간이 약간은 제한된 상황이어서 평소보다 인터뷰가 조금 덜 친절하게 진행이 됐습니다. 필요한 어떤 배경 지식이라던가 기술적 용어 같은 것들이 좀 많이 나오게 진행이 됐고, 거기에 대해서 제가 충분히 보시는 분들께 설명을 좀 드리기가 어려웠어서 해설하는 콘텐츠를 좀 따로 찍어서 같이 제공을 해드리면 좀 더 좋지 않을까라는 생각에 찍게 되었습니다. 그럼 시작하겠습니다. So let me introduce you Mr. Aravind Srinivas, co-founder and CEO of Perplexity AI.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
So how do you feel today?
I feel pretty excited about the city and opportunities here. So it's my first time to Korea actually.
What is your purpose of this visit?
So the purpose of this visit is to announce our partnership with SK Telecom. We also met the local pro users of Perplexity from Korea. It was really exciting to see how up to date they are with all the AI news that's happening in Silicon Valley. And they're asking questions about what's next and trying to learn a lot. And people are actually quite up to date with the latest.
Yeah, we Koreans like studying and learning.
Yeah, that's essentially the spirit of Perplexity, the product, which is to enhance the curiosity, make the process of learning new things or digging deeper into existing things much more fun. And that's why we think it'll resonate with the Korean demographic.
Yeah, and of course we'll cover the features and the characteristic of Perplexity later. Just before I introduce our audience that Perplexity is right now the fastest growing startup in AI industry. So is it correct?
Yeah, I believe we were the fastest to get the unicorn valuation. So we were founded in August 2022 and we achieved the unicorn round in early 2024.
Yeah.
So it is fair to say we were the fastest growing startup.
Okay, but you don't seem really proud. I mean, the velocity is not enough, the speed.
Oh, I mean, I'm look, I would be lying if I said I'm not proud. I'm definitely proud of how far we've come, but I'm also aware of how competitive this market is.
Yeah, sure.
And valuations are essentially leading indicator. The company isn't ready yet to justify that valuation in terms of business and the revenue. It's more the speed at which we are growing that's giving us that sort of evaluation. And when you're the best product in a certain category, everyone's trying to try to replicate you.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to push the company forward and move even faster.
Okay. So what's your version of explanation about Perplexity? Can you give us some brief explanation about it?
Yeah, so Perplexity is an answer engine. You go type in a question into Perplexity, you get a summarized answer with sources right at the top as footnotes as part of every sentence. Now, this is essentially a complete paradigm shift from 2 decades of 10 blue link based search engines to a clean answer engine that just gives you an answer. That doesn't mean the traditional search engine is dead. It's still very useful for navigating the web and doing a lot of tasks. But when you have actual questions, it's a very time consuming process of having to open several different tabs, reading each of these things and trying to arrive at an answer yourself. Imagine if someone did that work for you and actually only pulling the relevant parts from each of these links with a nice summarized answer. That's what Perplexity does.
It's interesting that you use the term answer engine because I mean, the search is the term that emphasizes human inputting something, but the answer emphasizes the people receiving the output. So is it your intention to make a contrast between the search engine?
Well, I didn't think about it that way. I think the reason I'm calling it an answer engine is that it's a clear difference. Essentially, search has been traditionally defined as like someone searching for the relevant documents for a certain query. On the other hand, when you say an answer engine, you're clearly describing an intent to say, okay, look, maybe people want to just have questions answered. It was not possible before to do this because AI wasn't this advanced yet. Today, it's possible. Like AI is finally at a point where you can build that answer engine experience. So you want to clearly highlight the difference to the user, that this is a different tool. It's not trying to take market share from an existing search engine. Rather, it's trying to create a new type of usage, a new type of market, new type of business model around answers. And that's a growing trend. The world's market for search engine is saturated. The number of queries on a search engine is not really going up. On the other hand, answer engine is like exactly at a point where Google was in the early 2000s. Before Google started, people thought internet was just meant to be a portal. Yahoo was really the prime real estate of the web. But as the search thing started working, when something starts working, people tend to use it. And more. So it's not like Google won by defeating Yahoo. Google won by actually building something differentiated from Yahoo. Even despite this, it took Google like until 2010 or 11 to actually get more web traffic than Yahoo.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Old habits die really hard. So Google has stayed at the top for like 25 years now. It's exactly what happened to Yahoo in the early 2000s that's happening to Google today. That doesn't mean they're in like a threat of going out of business instantly. But we think we can make a bet that whatever traffic we have today is definitely going to grow orders of magnitude more over the coming years because people are going to like learn how to ask questions. And once it starts really working, they're going to keep asking more questions.
Also, like one of the noticeable feature in Perplexity is that there are always citations to each answers. So it seems like it's affected by some kind of academic research methodology.
My background's in academia. I came to the United States like in 2017 to do my PhD in UC Berkeley after completing my undergrad in India. And when I was writing my first paper, one of the first things I was taught was don't write whatever you want. Every sentence you write in a scientific paper should be backed by a citation. This is such a simple statement, right? Such a simple thing to say. But if you apply this principle to anything you say in life,
I can't say
you really decouple what is an opinion and what is a fact. Facts are backed by evidence. Evidence is basically citation. Opinions are not. Opinions have like multiple evidences and like some of them are conflicting and there's more data needed.
이 내용 이후로는 이제 퍼플렉시티의 기술적인 배경에 대한 이야기들이 많이 나오는데 짧게 최대한 요약을 해서 전달을 드려보겠습니다. 방금 사실과 의견의 차이에 대해서 말했듯이 챗GPT라던가 이런 것들을 써보시면 이 언어 모델들이 거짓말을 한다, 소위 환각, 할루시네이션이라고 하는 현상을 발생시키곤 한다라는 얘기를 많이 접하고 또 경험을 해보셨을 거예요. 이 환각 현상을 줄이기 위해서 요즘 많이 각광받고 있는 기술이 Retrieval Augmented Generation이라고 해서 이제 RAG라고 부르는 기술인데요. 쉽게 말해서 이 언어 모델한테 일종의 가이드를 주는 거예요. 그냥 자기가 이미 학습한 데이터 속에서 답변을 생성하는 게 아니라 이 문서를 참조해서 답변을 해 라고 하는 거죠. 그럼 여기서 중요한 거는 이 언어 모델들에게 참조하라고 줄 그 문서들을 어떻게 정하는가, 그거 굉장히 중요하겠죠. 왜냐면 온라인상에 뭐 같은 키워드로 검색했을 때 참조할 만한 페이지가 뭐 수천만 개, 수억 개가 나올 수도 있잖아요. 그럼 그 중에서 어떤 것이 더 정확하고 더 정교한 내용을 담고 있는가 판단해서 이 래그라는 기술을 굉장히 잘 다루는 것이 퍼플렉시티의 비법 같은 거라고 할 수 있을 것 같습니다. So let's go back to your childhood. As you mentioned, like you grew up in India and went to IIT Madras, which is the best IIT, I guess. Can you describe your childhood environment and when did you get interested in computer science?
Yeah, so my childhood is like pretty interesting. We're not like a very well-to-do family or anything. So we were constantly valuing education, like being really smart and well-read. That mattered a lot more than like being rich. In the beginning, I was really studying hard for like getting really good grades, being the number one rank and things like that. Like I was result driven, but somewhere around like 7th or 8th grade, keep getting the first rank, that it was less interesting to me. and then I started to like see what is even higher of a challenge. I tried like some of these Olympiads, math, and that I wasn't like winning instantly. When I started doing those things, I started to build a genuine passion for like those topics, solving those problems, and like upskilling myself and getting better at reasoning. Obviously, tried to get into the Indian team.
You mean the IMO?
Yeah, I didn't get to the IMO, but I got to the stage before the IMO. So when I entered college, like IT, like I hadn't really written a lot of code in school, except for like basic C++ programming on like, building like a chess game or something. It was like, inefficiently written, like lots of like redundant thousands of lines of code. But that's how like people start writing code. They don't actually know how to write code in a structured way like a pro does, but you have the raw willpower to just like make the code work, right? And I learned those skills. I was actually in electrical engineering in school, but my friends were all in computer science, so we used to hang out together.
It's not, I'm not gonna offend you, but computer science is more like desirable than electrical
Oh yeah,
engineering.
100%. I didn't pick electrical engineering by choice. I wanted to get into computer science, but the way you allocated degree in IITs is also based on your rank.
Yeah.
On that, my exam day on JEE, I wasn't like really at my best, so I got a little bit lower rank than what I wanted.
Yeah.
But it kind of had an impact in my life in a different way, which is I wouldn't have been doing AI and machine learning if I was in computer science. Because I was not in computer science, I also was pretty strong in electrical engineering fundamentals too, like signals and systems, circuits. I could solve like analog circuits pretty well. So that system-like thinking of like looking at constraints and solving problems, or like being very good at linear algebra and probability. Because of all this, when we actually took a machine learning class in my third year of undergrad, everything came naturally because machine learning is less of traditional computer science and more like electrical engineering, like because you're just basically training algorithms to learn on data, and the math for ML is like largely just linear algebra and probability.
Yeah, sure.
And that's when like I started to build like a true appreciation for AI and ML. By the end of my undergrad, I'd written 4 or 5 research papers that were accepted at top conferences, and so I came to Berkeley pretty strong in my fundamentals.
And then, you went to UC Berkeley, and your advisor was Peter Avil.
Yeah.
And he's kind of a guru of reinforced learning.
That's right, yeah. He did his PhD with Andrew Ng. So the interesting thing with Peter Abil was like I wasn't initially his student. There was a rotation program. So I asked him for a project to rotate with him, and he just gave me a project and said like look, if you pick one of these projects that my lab students are working on and like you go work on it, write your own paper. If it gets accepted in a top tier conference, you can be my student.
It's kind of tough condition, like.
Yeah, but I always like challenges. Like if you ask like how did my background help me succeed, I think my background's always been like challenge after challenge after challenge. So I had no background. The kind of research he was doing of like trying to train RL for like robotics, like simulated robots that can walk, move their arms around and pick objects. So I had to learn all of that stuff from scratch. But it was amazing. Like I quickly got the hang of it and like skipped the winter vacation that fall. And I got a paper accepted in February and became a student.
Actually, my best friend is pursuing his PhD in computer science, and what he told me is that PhD program is nothing but it's all about finding the right question.
Right.
What's yours?
Yeah, I would say that when I started, RL was actually pretty hot because AlphaGo had just happened, and then DeepMind also published AlphaZero, and all these things were like really, really the hottest things. But then the contrarian insight. I mean, my first paper was not really about any question. I just did what I needed to do to get accepted into the lab. John Schulman, one of the co-founders of OpenAI, he was also a Peter Abil student. And so he was thinking about similar topics, and he invited me to be his intern at OpenAI. This was in 2018.
GPT like 1 or 2?
Yeah, GPT-1 was being built around that in that summer. Ilya Sutskever and like another person in OpenAI were like working on like GPT-1. So I got to see that. And the evidence was so clear that unsupervised learning, or like models that just learn with just raw data without any reward or like labels, could acquire a lot of common sense and be pretty good.
In the large scale.
Yeah, exactly. So I went back to Berkeley and told Peter Abil that like, hey, I think we're not like working on the right problem. Like RL is cool, but like it's not going to work on its own. And I think the vision is more like the cherry on the cake. Jan LeCun says this. The bulk of the cake is unsupervised learning.
이 얀 르쿠니 케이크라는 게 무슨 말이냐면 이 기계학습이라는 범주 내에서도 학습 방식에 따라서 분류들이 여러 가지가 있습니다. 먼저 지도학습, 비지도학습, 좀 다른 결로 강화학습이 있고요. 이 먼저 지도학습은 지금은 좀 가장 많이 효과가 떨어진다라고 평가를 받고 있는데 인간이 직접 이 기계한테 어떻게 뭘 해야 되는지 한마디로 지도를 한다라는 개념으로 생각해 주시면 될 것 같고요. 이제 비지도학습이라는 게 굉장히 많은 데이터들 중에서 알아서 AI가 군집화를 해서 비슷한 애들끼리 묶고 뭐 분류를 하고 스스로 패턴을 찾아가는 학습을 하는 방식이라고 생각해 주시면 될 것 같아요. 아까 말했던 아라빈드의 지도 교수인 피터 아빌 교수는 강화학습의 대가였어요. 강화학습이라는 거는 쉽게 알파고를 생각하시면 되는데 AI에게 우리가 게임을 시킬 거예요. 과업을 줄 거예요. 이 게임에서 어떻게 하면 보상이 주어지는지, 리워드 이런 것들을 알려줘서 아까 지도학습처럼 일일이 어떻게 행동하라고 지도하지 않아도 자기가 그 보상을 높이는 방향으로 학습을 하고 터득을 한다는 거죠. 알파고 같은 경우에도 스스로 이렇게 수백만 번의 바둑을 두면서 자기가 어떻게 하면 승리할 가능성을 높일 수 있는지를 학습해 나가는 거죠. 그래서 이 얀 르쿤이라는 분은 세계 AI 4대 천왕이라고 불리는 분 중에 한 분인데 2016년에 NIPS라는 학회에서 이제 말씀하셨던 내용인데 어떤 케이크가 있으면 케이크 위에 장식, 아이싱이라고 하는 장식이 있고 그 위에 이제 우리가 체리, 과일 같은 걸 얹어 놓잖아요. 이 강화학습은 사실상 이 케이크의 체리 같은 뭐 활용점정 같은 그런 역할이지만 이 케이크의 전체 부피를 차지하는 덩어리는 사실 비지도학습이다. 그만큼 비지도학습의 중요성을 굉장히 일찍 선언을 하신 거라고 할 수 있겠죠.
So we actually have to do unsupervised learning. There's no way around skipping it. So then like he's like, yeah, I agree. So I told him I need one semester where I don't have to write any paper. I just need to learn stuff. And he's like, okay, cool. Because I had shown a little bit of my track record, like he gave me the freedom to do that. And so I just literally spent like 6 or 7 months learning generative models and unsupervised learning. You even taught a class in Berkeley because the best way to learn something is to force yourself to teach it. If you force yourself to teach it to like 100 others, you are forced to like learn it as good as possible that you can answer any question about it. So we did that and like that got me an internship at DeepMind. There I worked on like pre-training models for images and they got like a pretty good result. And then that's when I posed the question for my PhD, which is like, hey, what if the idea of pre-training that's working for language, that's kind of working for images and vision, what if that worked for RL too? And I think that's what led me to write like a bunch of cool papers. And then I got an internship again at Google Brain. I worked with the guy who built the transformer actually.
Oh, really?
Ashish Vaswani. There we posed another questions like the transformer is working really well for language. What if it also worked well for vision? What if it also worked well for RL? And so I wrote a paper on vision with him. And then I went back to Berkeley and wrote a paper on RL, decision transformer with Peter Abil again. And so the PhD ended up being pretty successful because I posed 2 right questions. Both led to like 2 new insights that actually ended up being correct, which is pre-training is important and transformers are important. And now it's obvious, like everybody, you know, it's like preaching to the core, but like 2020, it wasn't that obvious that like it'll all be a transformer, it'll all be pre-training. People didn't actually like realize it's going to be the case.
이 트랜스포머라는 거는 사실 GPT가 Generative Pre-trained Transformer라는 약자일 정도로 거대 언어 모델을 개발하고 이 자연어 처리에서 굉장히 그냥 말도 안 되는 혁신적인 브레이크스루를 만들어낸 그런 기술이에요. 딥러닝 모델이고 굉장히 유명한 Attention is all you need라는 그 논문에서 처음으로 발표가 된 모델입니다. 이 트랜스포머를 만든 사람들은 다 지금은 AI 업계의 거물 같은 사람들이 됐었죠.
What impressed me is that although that I haven't been in the PhD program, but I guess it needs some kind of courage to say your advisor that our direction is wrong, we need to go to the next direction. How did you manage to say Peter Abil to change the direction?
Because I also like, you know, had access to other great people like Ilya Sutskever and
일리아 수츠케버는 많이들 아시겠지만 오픈AI 창립 멤버 중 하나로 이 오픈AI에서 가장 중요한 인물을 뽑으면 항상 꼽혔던 사람입니다. 오픈AI 사실상 기술 개발을 진두지휘했다고 알려져 있고 노벨 물리학상을 수상하신 AI 4대 천왕 제프리 힌튼 교수의 제자이기도 하고요. 또 작년에 샘 알트만 오픈AI 대표를 쿠데타를 일으켜서 쫓아내려고 한 주범이었다. 약간 이런 얘기들이 있었는데 결국에는 올해 초에 오픈AI를 떠나게 됐죠.
You know, I showed him my first ever paper I wrote at Berkeley. He just told me this is not good work. And I was very, very upset because I was like hoping he says something good. And I asked him, okay, why do you say that? Like, you know, it's a cool idea, like experiments are cool. And he just takes me to the whiteboard and says, look, the best ideas are the simplest ones that you can even describe in a sentence, and your idea is not that. He has this thing called minimal innovation for maximum results. The simplest things will always work at scale. I think that impacted me a lot. I was like, okay, that's pretty impressive. Like, also when you're very early on in your PhD, like 1 year in, you don't have anything to lose by pivoting and focusing on something else.
Yeah.
This keeps coming back everywhere. Like, when you have nothing to lose, you actually take risks and have potential to win big. When you have like too much to protect, when you feel like you've already won a lot, or like you have already like accumulated a lot, so you don't like really take big swings at new things, and therefore you don't actually win anymore.
It's similar to the day one, like
Day one mentality. Exactly. Yeah.
And I don't mean to like understate you, but you were really at the right place at the right timing. All those like transformer and
Correct. Yeah, it's very funny. Like if I hadn't done that project successfully in my first semester in Berkeley and gotten to Peter Rabee's lab, I wouldn't have gotten the internship at OpenAI. If I hadn't gotten an internship at OpenAI, I wouldn't have understood the importance of unsupervised learning. And if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gotten an internship at DeepMind. And then if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gotten an internship at Brain. Everything is like chained and connected. I definitely got lucky multiple times. But I'll also say that you have to create that luck surface area.
Luck surface area.
Yeah,
Like,
luck surface area. Yeah, essentially think about it as like, you have a big piece of land. You don't exactly know where the fertility is, but you just hope that like by trying at several different points. And I think that's essentially how like life works. You have to like really try to go all in on something. My first project had like literally nothing to do with my career, but I know that doing it well at that time is what led to a lot of things later.
Is it okay to ask to compare those three companies like OpenAI and DeepMind and Google Brain?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all these companies were pretty different. Today, what they are and back then what they were are very, very different. Brain doesn't even exist anymore. It's just all DeepMind. So I would say that OpenAI back then was like one lab that just blindly believed in simplicity and scale before other people.
It was non-profit organization.
Correct. Yeah, it was non-profit.
Was Elon still there?
I think he just had left because the conflict with Tesla. I was obviously a big fan of Elon Musk, so I was like, okay, looking to meet him or something, but like he had just left.
Yeah.
And I would say that DeepMind was a little more like a proper science lab. In fact, like the office had like a lot of meeting rooms named after scientists. Like there'd be a room called Einstein or Faraday, or like there'd be a statue of Turing in the office. They really celebrated like discoveries, and they really liked people coming up with like brilliant, innovative ideas. And Brain was more like engineering. Think about it as DeepMind that's not really that focused on blue sky thinking, but more on like pragmatic impact. And I think that's what led them to discover the transformer, because transformer was clearly aimed at like improving the machine translation of Google's Translate. There's some benefit from that kind of research too.
As you mentioned, like they were different at the time. Like, I mean, at the time, the DeepMind was kind of the best AI company because they built AlphaGo, and OpenAI was back then kind of just a small organization, and people haven't heard of them at the time.
Right.
What difference makes OpenAI to be more powerful or successful?
Right. I think it's just the focus and the faith they had in like one simple idea that made the difference for them. Whereas like DeepMind was spread out. They were working on many different projects, like lots of different teams, lots of projects. And I think that only way startups beat a big company is like focus. There's a quote of Bruce Lee that says like, I don't fear the man who practices 10,000 kicks once.
Oh, yeah.
But I fear the man who practices one kick 10,000 times. So for OpenAI, it was like the one idea of just scaling models.
이 질문 한 걸 좀 후회하고 있는데, 뭐 딥마인드가 더 안 좋은 회사고 뭐 오픈AI가 더 좋은 회사다, 이런 단순 비교는 아니고, 딥마인드도 인류 과학의 진보에 엄청난 역할을 했지만 생성형 AI라고 하면 떠오르는 회사가 오픈AI다 보니까 그래서 한 질문이었는데, 이제 얼마 전에 발표된 노벨 화학상의 주인공이 또 단백질 접힘의 문제를 이제 인공지능을 통해서 해결하는 알파폴드를 개발한 딥마인드 창업자 데미스 하사피스가 받았잖아요. 후회하고 있습니다.
And after those experiences in best companies, when did you decide to start your own company, and what problem did you aim to solve?
Yeah, I think like my decision to start a company is like initially it was driven by a little bit of like, everybody has that moment when they just feel like they also want to be entrepreneurs, be a founder, I think I also had all that when I came to Silicon Valley. Like I came to Berkeley. I got to watch all these like movies like Social Network and Pirates of Silicon Valley and the TV show Silicon Valley. Like it was very cool, like how people can build something from nothing. But I didn't have any idea. All I knew was I wanted to be a founder. That's all. Which is never a good idea to start a company. But over time, I started getting pretty influenced by some of the projects I was working on. And I was like, okay, it might be cool to start a company on compression.
Pied Piper, yeah.
Obviously, the whole Pied Piper and Silicon Valley thing, even though it's all like a joke, there is something to the idea of like lossless compression. When you train a generative model, like you can actually build like really better bit rates than hard-coded solutions like JPEG and MPEG. But the hardware requirements are also high in terms of like the inference costs. So that's essentially my first idea that failed, which is I couldn't convince anybody else to come along with me. So when I was at DeepMind, I used to read this book called In the Plex. It's written by this author named Stephen Levy. He completely like wrote a story of Google's early days. That was pretty phenomenal. Like I finally found an example I could emulate potentially, which is PhD students who converted an academic idea into a product that's used by millions of people. I wanted the same properties in my company, which is it has to be an idea that has good research grounding and connection. Mm-hmm. It has to be an idea that can be converted into a product that can be potentially used by millions of people. And the usage should make the AI grounding better and attract even more users. That flywheel needs to be established. Yeah. It also needs to be relevant even if AI keeps improving. Like tomorrow, the next version of the model shouldn't deprecate your product. Your product should actually benefit from it. So I wanted all these properties and I was really thinking hard of like what categories like you can actually do this. And clearly concluded it has to be either in search or self-driving. That was like my plan in 2021. But obviously I needed some money too. Taking a startup risk needs some balance in your bank account. So I started to like consider, let me work for a year and then try to do a startup. While I was working at OpenAI, there was a stat from the CTO of Microsoft, Kevin Scott, that was forwarded to all OpenAI employees that when Microsoft started monetizing GitHub Copilot, they made like 100,000 people sign up to pay on the first day itself. And each person is worth $100. So it's like 10 million in revenue on the first day.
Yeah.
In a period of 2 years, they have 50x that number. When that trend was very clear, I decided, okay, like AI is clearly no longer this research thing. This is something that can actually be used by millions of people. This is something that actually can satisfy the flywheel property. So why don't I try to actually build a company? And we started focusing more on like search over certain verticals. Again, why we did search is because I was obsessed about it. I've been reading about it for many years. And my co-founder, Dennis, who's a search engineer at Bing.
CTO
of Perplexity. And we just like prototyped a bunch of ideas. And then once we connected that insight of citations and chatbots, we started using it ourselves. And 7 days after ChatGPT's release, we launched it. Since then, we haven't really looked back.
You explained about the criteria that you had when you're looking for an industry like search or self-driving. In a common sense, like the winning strategy of a startup is deep dive and narrow down the problem as small as possible, overwhelm in that sector and expand it. But search is really a big and general problem. How could you be so ambitious to target that problem?
I think like honestly when we launched, we just thought that like maybe 10 or 20 people will use it.
So the expectation is low.
Very small. And like when I was writing the first set of tweets for Perplexity's release, I was like so scared that like, all my friends are gonna ridicule me. Like, after a few months, this is what he's launched. Like, who's gonna use this? Like, but the release surprised me pleasantly. Like, it was an instant hit. Like, a lot of people came to start using it. And it was not just the initial surge in usage and the complete drop. That was obviously a drop, but like the usage sustained. And then during the winter vacation, the usage actually blew up because people started sharing screenshots of Perplexity results, especially typing in their own names or their own social media handles. And then it was like, this AI knows so much about me. So that virality came and helped us. And then we made it conversational, let you ask follow-ups. And all this stuff made the usage keep going up. And that's when I was like, maybe the consumer thing is hard, but it seems like there's an opportunity here. And whether I like it or not, the usage is going up. So users drive what the startup is essentially. So we raised funding saying like we need some money to actually like scale this product up more. That's when like I started to seriously like think this could be possible and pushed harder and harder. And once we had a Series B investment, I was like, okay, this is like do or die. Like you actually have to go all the way here. And since then we've been pushing really hard to get there.
So you're not intended to like build a B2C product at first, but
Yeah, that's
I
correct.
mean, I think that people avoid consumer section because there are too many competitors.
Yeah.
How can we beat OpenAI? Like, how can we beat Anthropic? What's your perspective or attitude toward your competitors?
Yeah, we're not really competitor obsessed or competitor focused. I mean, we do look at what they do and try to do everything as well as possible. But honestly, since we started working on search way before all of them, for us, the real, like, if at all as a competitor, is the big G, right? Ultimate owner of search and internet ecosystem and
Big G.
traffic. I would just say that you cannot be competitor focused and build great products.
Mm-hmm.
You actually need to have your own vision of like what the future of that vertical that you're working on looks like. Only then you can attract good people, and only then you can actually build like useful things that don't exist yet, and only then you can make users like really love you and want to keep using you.
In that sense, I mean, Perplexity's user experience is really fascinating. I get the feeling that really a multiple optimization has been layered behind the service. The latency is short, your answer quality is better. Those additional questions are really, it's a proper questions. But your company is rather a small company. What makes this possible?
I guess like I'll give you a more high level picture. It's very hard for a company to be good at any one of these things, which is great design, good understanding of AI, not just like train models, but like deploy it into products that are used by many people, making sure that the infrastructure is pretty good, making sure that the product keeps improving, like the iteration speed is pretty high, like the accuracy of the product is like also pretty high. These are all things that like, you know, even just being good at one of these things is pretty hard.
Yeah.
But being good at like 5 of these things simultaneously is way harder. We believe in the relentless incremental progress. There's a formula called 1.01 to the power 365 is 37.78. 1.01 is essentially 1% improvement. The incremental progress per day feels like very small. But if you did this consistently for 365 days, at the end of the year, you made 3,700% improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you build a dramatically better product too. If you want to make your product 100x better, you need to put in that work to make 2% better every day. And that's how you get there. It's not going to like magically happen where you sit in a room, you brainstorm an idea to make the product so much better. It doesn't happen like that.
And what about your culture? Like,
Yeah, the culture is like really centered around the product.
mm-hmm.
I strongly believe in this thing where culture is about actions and not like a set of values.
Actions, not a value. Okay.
Yeah, what you do is who you are. And what you do should be guided by what the product should be. So if your actions are mirroring what the product should do, then it keeps living inside you, right? Let me like concretely say our product should be fast.
Mm-hmm.
So each person in the company should move fast too. Our product should be accurate. So each person in the company should be as truth-seeking as possible.
Truth-seeking.
Truth-seeking meaning like...
I heard that term like in Bezos' episode and
Yeah.
Lex Friedman.
It's hard to be truth-seeking. He
Yeah.
clearly says that. We are all social animals. We like to seek validation, not truth. But we need to be truth-seeking in a company for the company to move forward. You know, like the kind of stuff I said Peter Beal about,
Yeah.
like change research directions. That's truth-seekingness, right? It's not
Yeah.
comfortable. And then obsession about the user, which is something that, you know, Bezos is very known for. We kind of mirror the principle in the product design where the user is never wrong. Like even if they typed in a wrong query or even if they didn't type in a good prompt, it's not their fault. Like you have to do the work to make sure the answer is still working there. So that is mirrored by like saying we just obsess about the user.
I don't mean to be rude, but you've been a founder and CEO in less than 2 years. And I guess there are many challenges towards you because every great product pushes its creator to be better and outweighs its speed. Yeah. But I can see your kind of a conviction about how to run a company. Is there any memorable advice that you received from other people?
I mean, one advice I think I would always hold is that it's not a direct advice given to me, but it's something that I keep telling myself many times, which is in an interview, someone asked Elon Musk, like after the first 3 rocket launches failed and he had like 20 million or 25 million left in his bank and he had to spend the money on the 4th launch. And the interviewer asked him, why didn't you just give up and just use that money and go back and live a life? And the answer he gave was not like, oh, I really love rockets and things like that. The answer he gave was, I never give up. I would have to be dead or incapacitated. Like you would have to kill me. Until I'm alive, the company is going to be alive. I thought that was like, damn, that's intense. Like when you have that attitude, you can actually adopt the nothing to lose mindset. It's almost like saying it's okay to fail, but I'm not going to die. Like you can fail temporarily. You can have like fail launches. You can try multiple product features and none of them might be resonating with users, and it's okay. What's not okay is like you thinking the company is going to die and not putting your work. You only lose if you think you lost. Until you refuse to admit defeat, you've not lost yet. You're still there in the game. I think that's a very powerful mindset.
You've mentioned about the importance of truth seeking.
Yeah.
And what truth does Perplexity seek for?
Perplexity seeks the truth of like truly understanding what's everything, right? Anything can be understood better. Whatever you know can be always understood better. Better explanations for existing things.
Always.
Yeah. And also stuff that you don't understand, you can always aim to understand it. So that's why like there's this whole book called Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch that states that knowledge is infinite. Because everything that already exists can be refined and understood even better. By that argument, you can always keep creating new knowledge. So I think like for us, the ultimate objective is to help every person on the planet understand whatever they want, ask questions with no judgment, and come to us and like just keep learning more. And I think a world where people are more truth-seeking and have the resources to do that will be a better world, because people will be like more objective about things. When some people disagree on something, like you can just like have an AI fact check and tell you what's right. So I think like those sort of changes will already have a meaningful impact on like how the world functions.
You always bring a citation. So you read a lot of books.
Yeah.
Can you mention some books that influenced most?
Obviously, I've read 0 to 1 of Peter Thiel, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, In the Plex by Stephen Levy, Poor Charlie's Almanac, which is basically a book about Charlie Munger, Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, biographies by Walter Isaacson. I've read Bezos' shareholder letters, also read like shareholder letters of Warren Buffett. So I read like many books for different moments, different inspirations. Sometimes I go pretty deep into like facts and like actually understanding deeper things. Sometimes I just read biographies. Sometimes I just read like generic wisdom. The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch had a big impact on me. So yeah, like these are some of the books that come to my mind.
이게 재밌는 게요. 아라빈드 CEO는 가장 존경하는 창업자가 구글 창업자들이라고 해요. 레리 페이지랑 세르게이 브린. 그러니까 구글의 대항마 내지는 구글이 지금 오랫동안 지배해온 검색의 시장을 뭐 바꾸겠다라고 하는 것 치고는 구글을 굉장히 존경하고, 그 이유가 레리 페이지나 세르게이 브린도 이제 스탠퍼드 컴퓨터공학과에서 이 검색 알고리즘을 연구하던 사람들이었는데, 박사과정 정도의 정말 연구 기술 기반을 가지고 실제로 이렇게 큰 회사를 만들었다는 걸 존경한다라고 했는데요. 정말 미국을 대표하는 기술 업계를 대표하는 전설적인 창업자들 중에서는 컴퓨터공학 박사학위가 있는 분은 생각보다 드물긴 하더라고요. 저도 생각을 해봤을 때. 예를 들면 빌 게이츠, 주커버그 다 컴퓨터를 하셨지만 자퇴하셨죠. 뭐 스티브 잡스 자퇴였고, 일론 머스크도 그렇고 제프 베조스도 물리학 전공이었다고 알고 있어요. 그래서 아라빈드 CEO도 자기의 뿌리가 연구자이다 라고 말을 하기 때문에 구글의 창업자들을 존경하는 것 같습니다.
And in several interviews, you mentioned about Google founders. And there's a quote that I brought here that you mentioned about Larry Page, that his background at HCI, the human-computer interaction, helps him to bring a new kind of perspective in the NLP.
Correct.
Yeah. You said that the great founders are kind of a people that combines two different areas. And what about you? Like, what do you think that you're combining?
I think I'm combining the idea of like rethinking like one of the most fundamental software we all use, which is search. And that academic idea of citations, right? It's coming back essentially. Like, look, at the end of the day, I am a deep researcher myself. Like, I love researching things. I love learning new things. And I think that's what's like translating into the product. Like, the product appeals a lot to people who just want to learn more. That's fundamentally because I like to learn more. There's no reason like everybody in the world shouldn't be like some kind, like to some extent, like an academic, like, like just digging deeper into topics, learning more, and like being curious about things.
I mean, that's kind of a trust about human race.
Yeah.
Some people might assume that people likes to play. But what you're saying is, if people is given for the chance to learn, they will learn and they will be more knowledgeable. Is that your belief about human?
I mean, look, I'm optimistic that all people will be curious about something or the other. I mean, not everyone has to like ask 10 questions a day and learn a lot about like every topic, but I think everybody has like something or the other to ask and learn. Whether it's learning driven by utility or learning driven by curiosity, doesn't matter as long as they learn.
So I heard many people say that in AI, period, an ability to create good question should be more important because answer is what AI brought to us. Making a question is the way of people differentiate it from others. Like, do you agree about this statement?
I think like obviously the first question you can ask is a spark of curiosity essentially. And some people are good at it, like it comes naturally to them to ask good questions, like you're able to ask good questions, but not a lot of people are. And some people might just be wanting to know more about some topic but may not know how to channelize that curiosity into a good question. And so I think if AIs can help people do that, I think it can also teach people to ask better questions.
My last question. Perplexity is growing very well, and is there anything that you worry about, you're afraid about? Maybe you can fail to change people's behavior. Like there might be no era of answer engine. What do you fear most?
I mean, I don't fear those things actually. I think it's pretty clear to me that like in 2030 or 2035, search cannot be the way it is today. That's very clear to me. I just don't know it'll just be us or many others or like whether we'll even be there. It's very early days. A lot of startups have like gotten a certain high and then failed to actually keep growing. Started like degrowing, like all these things have happened. So obviously I'm afraid of those scenarios, but I would just say that like the experience has taught me like any bad outcome like 6 months from now are based on decisions I make today. It won't happen like because I did something for like 4 months later. So for me the most important thing is to continue to make good decisions, continue to move fast. But there are some factors beyond our control also, like how's the competition doing, what are their moves, and like, you know, what are our like technological access we get, and all these things right now it's so hard to predict. That's why it's fun. Like if you were guaranteed of success in a startup, you wouldn't do it. Let's say you exactly knew the methodology and you knew the exact amount of pain, but you also knew the endpoint. It's not as fun. Like in general in life, if you know the future ahead of time, it's not as fun.
Yeah, thank you for your time, and I really enjoyed the conversation with you. Yeah, I hope our audience too.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it too.
Okay, thank you.
네, 이렇게 해서 좀 복잡하고 어려운 인터뷰가 종료가 됐고요. 사실 저는 굉장히 즐거웠습니다. 이번에 정말 지금 이 시점에 세상을 또 기술로 제품으로 많이 바꾸고 있는 분을 인터뷰를 할 수 있어서 너무 재밌었고, 아까 이제 주어진 시간이 조금 짧았다고 말씀을 드렸었는데 처음에 40분 얘기하셨거든요. 근데 그래도 한 1시간 반, 그냥 2배 정도 해주셔서 다시 한번 감사드리고, 개인적으로는 퍼플렉시티의 가장 좋은 점이 그 후속 질문을 정말 잘 던져준다는 거였어요. 이것까지 더 알고 싶은데 라고 할 만한 질문들의 리스트를 잘 제공해주고, 그 중에 하나 정도는 정말 꼭 눌러보고 싶은 질문이 있더라고요. 그래서 제가 알고 있기로는 이 후속 질문 자체를 비즈니스 모델로 해서 광고와 이 후속 질문 리스트를 결합하는 작업도 염두에 두고 있다라는 걸로 알고 있습니다. 사실 구글을 대체할 거다, 구글을 대항마, 기존 검색의 멸종, 사실 보시는 분들 중에는 의구심을 가질 수 있는 분들도 많다고 생각합니다. 그래서 아라빈드님 같은 경우에도 본인 트위터나 이런 걸 보면은 우리는 짱입니다, 우리 구글 박살낼 수 있습니다, 이렇게 말씀하는 분은 아니세요. 아직 뒤처지고 해야 되는 게 너무나 많다. 그리고 사실 이 검색 서비스를 상용화하는데 또 비용을 어떻게 최적화시킬까, 여러 가지 문제들이 산적해 있는데 그 문제들을 다 알고 직면하고 있다. 하지만 작은 팀으로, 지금 몇십 명 팀으로 여기까지 왔고 앞으로 더 성장해 나갈 것이기 때문에 불가능하다고 생각하지 않는다 라는 게 기본적인 어떤 기조더라고요. 그래서 제가 봤을 때는 그게 언제가 되더라도 지금 퍼플렉시티가 선도하고 있는 새로운 검색의 경험, 대화의 경험은 분명히 우리 삶에도 큰 영향을 끼치게 될 것 같다. 앞으로 좀 주목해볼 정말 뛰어난 회사 그리고 창업자가 아닌가 생각합니다. 혹시 제가 약간 틀리거나 잘못 전달한 내용이 있다면 댓글로 지적 달아주시면 제가 다시 한번 좀 살펴보고 반성하고 다시 배우는 그런 시간이 될 수 있을 것 같습니다. 그럼 시청해주셔서 감사합니다.